Ukraine just brought the war right to the heart of Russia, hitting Moscow hard with one of the largest attacks on the country's capital since the conflict began. Despite encircling the city with a ring of radars and air defense systems, the Kremlin seemed to be caught off guard by this attack, with multiple explosions ringing out around the city and thick plumes of smoke captured on camera too. It's one of the clearest signs yet that Ukraine is in the ascendancy and Vladimir Putin has completely lost control of his own skies. The incident occurred overnight on October 26th into the early hours of October 27th, when swarms of Ukrainian drones crossed the border and made a beeline for the Moscow region and several other regions around western Russia. In total, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed to have intercepted 193 drones, including 40 over the Moscow region. The ministry went on to add that 34 of the drones in question were heading directly for the capital city itself when they were allegedly taken out, with several other regions including Kaluga, Bryansk and Tula also targeted. 47 UAVs were flown over the Bryansk region, 42 over the Kaluga region, 40 over the Moscow region, including 34 UAVs flying to Moscow, 32 over the Tula region, 10 over the Kursk region, 7 over the Oryol region, 4 over the Rostov region, 4 over the Voronezh region, 2 over the Orenburg region, 2 over the Tambov region, 1 over the Belgorod region, 1 over the Lipetsk region, and 1 over the Samara region. The mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, also confirmed that dozens of Ukrainian drones have targeted the capital. He posted online throughout the night claiming that the city's air defenses were successfully repelling all incoming threats, while also warning locals about the risk of falling debris, with residents urged to remain at home. Meanwhile, 2 of Moscow's 4 principal airports, Domodedovo and Zhukovsky, were forced to temporarily suspend operations due to fears of further drone activity in the region. There were no reports of any major damage in Moscow, and the Kremlin was quick to claim that it had successfully shot down Kyiv's drones. However, as we know from past experience, Russian officials tend to have a very loose relationship with the truth. Russia will happily twist the narrative and spin statistics to suit its own agenda, covering up the parts it doesn't want the public to know about. However, in the modern age of the internet, the truth always tends to come out in the end, and Russian social media sites were soon filled with panicked posts published by Moscow residents, along with photos and videos showing the city skyline thick with clouds of smoke rising up into the air. Locals also reported several loud explosions rocking the city's streets, and with close to 22 million people living in the Moscow metropolitan area, there's no telling how many of the city's inhabitants spent the night of October 26th in states of shock and fright, feeling just a small sliver of what innocent civilians of Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities experience on a near-nightly basis, as Russia's massive drone swarms and missile salvos rain down on their homes and surrounding structures. According to Russian channels, one of Ukraine's drones reportedly struck a high-rise building. However, analysts have also suggested this may have actually been the result of one of Russia's own air defense systems misjudging its trajectory and accidentally firing on a friendly target. While that may sound ridiculous, it certainly wouldn't be the first time that Russia's air defenses have made this kind of mistake. In fact, only a week ago, in early October, another devastating friendly fire blunder occurred, with one of Russia's Pantsir S-1 air defense systems launching a missile aimed at intercepting Ukrainian drones in the area. Unfortunately for Russia, the missile missed its target and was instead caught on camera arching through the air before falling down on an apartment block, resulting in a huge explosion that temporarily lit up the night sky before heavy plumes of smoke streamed out of the building. Another infamous incident occurred in 2023 when a Russian Su-34 fighter jet accidentally dropped a bomb on the Russian city of Belgorod, some 25 miles away from the Ukrainian border. The subsequent explosion left 3 people injured and damaged several homes and vehicles as well. So Russia absolutely has history when it comes to accidentally hitting its own people and infrastructure, and in a city like Moscow, which is so densely populated with so many high-rise structures all around, it wouldn't be surprising at all if an air defense missile accidentally missed its target and instead collided with a nearby building. Either way, despite the Kremlin's claims that the attack was entirely thwarted, it's clear that at least some sort of damage was done in certain areas of the city. Reporters at the Astra Independent News Agency even managed to track down the exact location where some of the thick plumes of smoke were rising into the air. Smoke is visible near the village of Kommunarka in Moscow after the explosions. Astra geolocated photos from eyewitnesses. On the night of October 27th, drones were shot down in the Moscow region, the Moscow mayor reported. Residents reported explosions in various cities in the Moscow region, including Moscow. In Kommunarka, part of Moscow, smoke was visible after the explosions, according to eyewitness photos. Astra geolocated the footage. It was indeed taken in Komunarka, with smoke visible in the wooded area adjacent to Proyektorovany Drive. Astra was also able to obtain evidence of a fire breaking out elsewhere in the Moscow region. An oil depot caught fire in the Sepukov Moscow region. The fire has already been extinguished, but the cause remains unknown. On the evening of October 26th, a fire broke out in the area of Sepukov Oil Depot in Novoselky Street, according to an Astra analysis of eyewitness footage. The Sepukov city administration told local media that an empty fuel tanker caught fire, but the fire was quickly extinguished and no cause was reported. While this fire was not officially linked to the drone attack, it's highly likely to be related, especially given the fact that a fuel tanker caught fire, as Ukraine has made a habit in recent weeks and months of targeting fuel and oil-related locations and infrastructure in its deep strike drone attacks on Russia. Again, local officials were quick to downplay the incident, stating that the fire was swiftly extinguished and claiming that the tanker in question was empty at the time of the strike. However, as with all official Russian reports, it's recommended to take this one with a large pinch of salt, since the Kremlin so often lies and stretches the truth to suit its own agenda. Similar incidents played out in other regions, and Astra, among other news outlets, reported on them all. In occupied Luhansk, for example, the Ukrainian armed forces successfully struck not one but two oil depots, as confirmed by local occupying authorities. The attack damaged administrative buildings, several fuel trucks, and fuel tankers. Employees were promptly evacuated, and there were no injuries, said Andrei Alisiev, Deputy Minister of Fuel, Energy and Coal Industry of the LPR. In the Kursk region of Russia, meanwhile, a fire reportedly broke out close to a substation. Tonight, a Ukrainian drone attacked the city of Rilsk. The strike caused a fire in the outbuildings of a house located near a substation. Fire crews extinguished the fire, said Kursk Regional Governor Alexander Kinstein. In the Bryansk region, which sits just north of Ukraine and also borders Belarus, making it one of the most commonly targeted areas for Ukrainian and drone missile strikes, a minibus was allegedly struck, resulting in one fatality and several injuries, according to Astra reports. The minibus driver was killed as a result of a kamikaze drone strike on a moving minibus in the village of Pogar in the Pogarsky district, Bryansk Regional Governor Alexander Bogomaz reported. 5 passengers were also injured, all of whom were quickly taken to the hospital, he added. Given that Ukraine almost exclusively focuses on military targets or high-value infrastructure when attacking Russia, the minibus incident appears to be something of an anomaly. It may be that Russian officials aren't telling the full story here, or that the minibus was taken out inadvertently. Either way, Kyiv has yet to comment on this incident, but it appears that the vast majority, if not all of its drones, were aimed at military sites or critical infrastructure locations. Indeed, earlier in the day of October 26th, Ukrainian drones were spotted at several military airfields across Russia, including at least one in the Moscow region. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation and Russian Media, confirmed the presence of Kyiv's drones in these locations, writing online, "In the Moscow region and other regions of Russia, military airfields are under attack." Russian media reports provided additional details, with some sources claiming that Ukrainian strike drones had targeted an airfield housing a variety of Russian aircraft, including Tu-160, Tu-95MS and Tu-22M3 strategic bombers. The reports didn't mention which airfield exactly was under attack, but given the available information released so far, plus the fact that there are only a few military airfields in the Moscow region, it's likely that this incident occurred at either the Chukalovsky airfield or the Kubinka airfield, or perhaps both. Explosions were also reported on October 26th at the Shaikovka airfield and Kaluga airport, both situated in the Kaluga region, southwest of Moscow. Shaikovka is reported to be the home of several Tu-22M3 bomber planes, while other military aircraft are also likely to have been present at the Kaluga airport as well. No further details have been released about what damage, if any, was done to the planes at these locations, but this all ties in with Ukraine's long-running campaign against Russian airfields and military bases, dating back to the iconic Operation Spiderweb attack of June 1, 2025, in which 4 separate airfields were all targeted by Ukrainian drones, and a large number of aircraft were either damaged or destroyed, all in the span of a single day. Also on October 26th, Ukrainian forces carried out yet another successful strike, this time in the Belgorod region of Russia. The Russian forces have made relatively significant progress in recent days in their efforts to capture the Ukrainian city of Vovchansk, just over the border from Belgorod. The 16th Army Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces issued a statement online explaining the situation. The enemy tried to fully exploit a window of opportunity. After a dry period and an extremely hot summer, the Siversky, Donets and Vovcha rivers had dried up, simplifying logistics for the adversary. At the same time, reserves had been stockpiled and there were still enough leaves on the trees. Altogether, this led to a sharp increase in activity in the Vovchansk direction. As a result, the Kremlin's troops seemed confident of a crushing victory in the area, and Vladimir Putin himself was reportedly informed on October 26th that his forces had already occupied around 70% of the city of Vovchansk. Unfortunately for those Russian troops, Ukraine's forces were planning the perfect counter-operation. On the night of October 26th, they used drones to attack the nearby Belgorod dam, which immediately began leaking water, flooding Russian dugouts, cutting several units off from their supply lines and putting some of the Kremlin's troops at risk of being quite literally washed away. Robert Magyar Brovdy, commander of the armed forces of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces in the 16th Army Corps, shared news and footage of the dam attack online. The Belgorod reservoir cracked today. Since the initial strike, the water level has dropped by 100 centimeters. The hit was carried out by the birds of the 1st Separate Center of the Unmanned Systems Forces, transformed from the 14th USF Regiment. Thanks to this attack, Ukraine's forces now stand a much better chance of strengthening their positions in the Vovchansk area, and Russian troops will likely find it far more challenging to push on and capture the territory it's been targeting in recent times. All in all, October 26th was a strong day as far as Ukraine's offensive maneuvers were concerned. The country's armed forces, and especially its drone operators, were able to strike at several regions around Russia and in occupied territories like Luhansk, dealing untold amounts of damage with fires and explosions breaking out in numerous locations. And even if Moscow didn't suffer any major damage, according to the latest available data and reports, the very fact that Kyiv is able to send dozens of drones into the skies over the Russian capital is a very big deal. It's a sign of how far Ukraine's armed forces have come. When the war began over 3.5 years ago, Kyiv was entirely and exclusively focused on defending its territory, holding its defensive lines and fending off wave after wave of Russian assaults and aerial bombardments. It had no chance and no time to even think about counterattacks, let alone direct strikes on Moscow, the beating heart of Russia's culture, government, and higher society. Now, things have changed. Ukraine has solidified its defenses and found the time, resources, and opportunities it needed to strike back at its enemy, carrying out an ever-increasing series of successful attacks not only in occupied regions, but deep into Russia itself, hundreds of miles beyond its borders. In doing so, Kyiv's forces are bringing the war home to the Russian people and to Vladimir Putin himself. For years, many Russians have been able to see the war as a distant conflict, one that doesn't have any direct, notable impact on their lives. This is especially true for many of those that live in Moscow, the richest city in Russia, where the quality of life is far higher than most other towns and cities across the country. There, the general public and Russia's elites have been allowed to go about their day-to-day lives, enjoying the comforts and luxuries the city has to offer, feeling a million miles from the chaotic and blood-soaked battlefields of Donetsk, Luhansk, and other occupied territories along the front lines. Many would never have imagined that they'd ever see the day when Ukrainian drones were buzzing above their heads or raining fire down on their capital city's streets. But that's all starting to change as Kyiv continues to push the boundaries and break new ground with its deep drone strikes. Now even citizens of Moscow, which is supposed to be Russia's safest stronghold, will start to think twice about stepping out of their homes in the evenings. They'll begin casting nervous glances into the air anytime they hear a vague buzzing sound, fearful that another Ukrainian drone might be around the corner. They'll check their phones and social media channels for news and updates of possible attacks or evacuation orders. Bit by bit, this will take a toll on their lives and their mindsets, and that's exactly what Ukraine is hoping for. Because when Kyiv conducts attacks of this kind, it's not purely hoping to deal as much damage as possible, starting massive fires and triggering devastating explosions. Instead, one of its main objectives is to make the Russian people see and feel the effects of the war firsthand. This, in turn, may gradually influence public opinion, pushing more and more people to condemn Putin's persistence and call for an end to the war once and for all. This is already starting to happen. A recent Russian poll carried out by the Levada Center found that support for the war has reached an all-time low, with just 27% of people feeling that the fighting should continue. 66% of Russians, meanwhile, believe that the time is long overdue for peaceful negotiations and a ceasefire agreement. More Russians also now feel that the war is impacting their lives, with 22% stating that the conflict has significantly affected either themselves or their loved ones, and 58% agreeing that it's affected them to at least some extent. Some have lost friends or family members in the conflict, for example, while others have felt their freedoms and financial situations worsen as a result of sanctions and restrictions related to the war. And if Ukraine's drones keep on appearing in Russia's regions, towns, and cities in the weeks and months ahead, those numbers are going to rise. More Russian people will feel their lives directly impacted by the war. More will become fearful to leave their homes and go about their daily business. More will worry that they might be mobilized and sent to fight on the front lines against their will. And more will feel a growing sense of anger and resentment for the one man who started all this madness, and the one man who still, for now, has the power to stop it, Vladimir Putin himself. While Putin may not care much for the average Russian, he does care about power, and he knows he needs to keep a large part of the population on his side to maintain his powerful position. But the national mood is starting to sour as the economy weakens and millions of Russians grow sick and tired of a war that feels like it will never end. And with Moscow itself now under threat, smoke filling the city's skies and pickup trucks filled with armed guards aiming machine guns into the air right outside the Kremlin gates, the Russian president has never looked weaker. You can learn more about Putin's rising levels of desperation in this video, which looks at how the Kremlin recently faked a major victory in Ukraine in a pathetic attempt to convince itself and the wider world that it was actually winning the war. Alternatively, watch this video for a detailed breakdown of how Russia's ongoing economic collapse has Putin between a rock and a hard place, with no way out and nothing but misery on the horizon for the Russian leader. Make sure to subscribe to our channel too so you can stay informed and up to date on all the latest news and developments from the Russia-Ukraine war and other important conflicts around the world. And thank you for watching.